Kicking us off in 5th place, we have Water Park Troubles. This tale takes place at Schlitterbahn, which is a theme park owned by Cedar Fair in Texas on the Raging Rapids portion of the Lazy River. Our narrator Vanessa and her friends didn't expect anything intense from the ride. They were all just, looking forward to relaxing, watching the water go by, enjoying the scenery. As expected, the ride wasn't super intense whatsoever at first, until it hit a patch of white water, and because of the angle that the raft hit the bump, Vanessa and her companions were launched into the river. Nope, that's not supposed to be part of the ride. And while the ride might have only been, 3 feet or so deep of water, I'm reminded of all the posters from my local pool growing up about how people can literally drown in a bathtub. So yikes! Vanessa described herself as entering a state of shock, feeling emotions ranging from fright to embarrassment, confusion, and panic. As she attempted to reach for the raft to pull herself back in, she realized she couldn't see her friends anywhere, and she was once again being yanked underwater. Panic had taken over as the main emotion by this point, and Vanessa found herself swirling around and around and around under the water. Thankfully, a nearby lifeguard jumped into action and was able to hoist Vanessa and her friends back into their raft, allowing them to enjoy the rest of the rapids in the intended fashion. I'm a little concerned about the lack of seatbelts on that ride since they were never mentioned, and I feel like that should be a thing, or like a weight sensor to stop the ride in event that, someone goes over. Oh, just me, okay. As a high point to this, somehow Vanessa managed to keep her glasses on throughout the entire ordeal. Go Vanessa! In 4th place, we have an urban legend from Canada's Wonderland. Time to move on to a Cedar Fair park that's a little closer to home. As someone who spends most of September through December at Canada's Wonderland every year, I just knew I had to include this ghost story in today's list. While Wonderland might be home to the scariest of scary monsters every October, the iconic Wonder Mountain is actually home to a ghostly spirit all year round. Construction of the iconic theme park happened between 1979 until 1981, with construction of the mountain alone involving a dozen local companies under Cincinnati engineer Curtis D. Summers. Now, while we don't know the name of our victim, one of the construction workers who was working on Wonder Mountain passed on the job, and for the most part, the details of his passing and specifics have been kept pretty secret. I tried. I promise I tried. This ghostie haunts the mountain to this day, specifically the Thunder Run ride. If the ride operators don't greet the area with good morning and good night at the beginning and the end of each operating day, the ride will malfunction and cease operations until given the proper respect. Honestly, I'm all for inviting the ghost to roam the park during Halloween haunt. What's the worst that could happen? An actual ghost over in Ghostly Pines or Spirit Manor would be so much fun to see. Oh, just my own opinion again? Of course. In 3rd place, we have the Warner Brothers Jungle Habitat. Originally opening on July 19th of 1972, this now abandoned park closed its doors by 1976, which is a really bad timeline for a theme park that was technically never completed. The first time Jungle Habitat made headlines was only months after it first opened for business, when an Israeli tourist named Abraham Levy was riding through the safari in a taxicab and decided to roll down the window to get a better look at some of the animals roaming around. 2 lions attacked the car and mauled the 26-year-old tourist, causing lacerations to his face and shoulder. He took credit for the harm, citing his own foolishness, which helped to dodge, a media onslaught. For the most part. By the end of the year, reports of animals escaping into the wilds of West Milford, which is where the park is located, were far too many in volume to be ignored. Besides the sightings of harmless animals like peacocks, there were numerous rumors spreading about dangerous animals such as a pack of wolves and a lion being sighted along local roads. Okay, look, I grew up in the land of moose, and I wouldn't want to see one of those on the side of the highway. I can't imagine seeing a lion on the side of one. These sentiments voiced way back in the day are identical to the rumors still running rampant today. Tales told by local residents who have, looked out into their backyards include wandering ostriches and a band of baboons running amok in the town's pharmacy. Guess they needed a prescription filled. Emus, baboons, and even wolves are just some of the uncaged critters which have been known to actually have escaped the park. I feel like I found the origins for the Night at the Museum franchise. On July 8th of 1974, a 68-year-old visitor from Long Island was grabbed by the trunk of a baby elephant, which then slammed her against a fence and bit her. The woman, her name's Elizabeth Ennis by the way, was later awarded $200,000 by a court. In an account in the New York Times, she claimed the elephant bit her on the right hand, and because of the trauma incurred by being slammed into the fence, she had persistent pain in her right side that prevented her from lifting heavy items. Her husband was awarded $5,000 for the loss of companionship. I'm just glad that's all that she went through. Goodness, elephants are pretty big. The animals also had a tendency to damage the cars that passed through. An e-museum for the park that exists online now says that the tigers like to bite and pop car tires, and monkeys like to rip antennas off the cars. Sounds like a lack of good animal training and boundaries to me, but I'm no animal expert. Right after the park closed in October of 1976, some of the animal carcasses were left outside. This pile grew until, 30 animal bodies, including that of an elephant, a bison, camel, and some zebras, were all left lying until April, when the ground had thawed enough to finally bury what was left of them. The 6 months that they were left exposed was a violation of state laws, which stated that any animal should be buried within 48 hours of its passing. Despite this violation, Warner Brothers were not sanctioned. Jungle habitat is gone now, but never forgotten. Reports of mysterious kangaroo sightings in remote corners of West Milford still turn up from time to time. Be careful, kangaroos hurt.
Number 2 on this list is Pripyat Amusement Park. Pripyat is a town that we've talked a lot about on this channel already. In fact, it was recently featured in a video where we looked at the top 5 mysterious towns that are completely abandoned. Pripyat is a ghost town in northern Ukraine near the Ukrainian and Belarus border. It was named after the nearby river Pripyat and was founded in 1970. Right in the town is a small amusement park that once looked quite fun and had plans to grow into a big Ukrainian park that people might flock to. Those dreams were never realized though, and now it sits in complete and utter disarray. Those dreams were never realized because of the horrible accident that occurred in 1986. You see, the town of Pripyat was basically established to serve the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. When it was first built, it was a closed town basically only for the workers of this place, but it grew and grew as time went on, and at its height had a population of just under 50,000 people. I don't need to go into too much detail about the accident as a whole, because I imagine that you guys are all pretty aware. But basically, this was the worst accident of this nature in human history, and for all our sakes, we need to hope that it never happens again. The radiation damage was absolutely massive, and right after it happened, the entire town of Pripyat had to be evacuated. That, of course, has left the amusement park, right in the middle of this town, completely abandoned as well. Not a lot of people have gone to this town or park since this incident occurred. For a long time, it wasn't safe to set foot within a set radius of the blast. Those who have been brave or foolish enough to set foot into this town and explore the amusement park have reported some strange and scary findings. Rumor has it that some sort of entity lives there. Something dark and evil calling this abandoned place home. A nasty and sinister entity that doesn't like to be disturbed. There have been talks of this being some type of shadow creature or potentially a beast like a werewolf of sorts. Either way, the people who visit this place feel an overwhelming sense of dread when they're there. They also feel as if they're unwelcome, like they entered somebody's home who doesn't want them there. There are multiple reasons why this amusement park is abandoned, so I'd stay away if I was you. And finally, number 1 on this list is Six Flags. Now, I don't mean Six Flags as a chain or anything like that. There's 23 different Six Flags in the United States, and not all of them are haunted. One in particular, though, is currently out of commission, abandoned, and definitely a spot you shouldn't go to. All the Rooms writes, this Six Flags fell out of business following serious damage from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The park opened in 2000 and was only operating for a few years before suffering significantly during the hurricane, which displaced 20,000 people and killed nearly 2,000 people. The park closed after Hurricane Katrina, and there wasn't enough funding for repairs, so it fell into further decay over the last few years. To this day, there's still an eerie sign at the entrance to the park that says closed for the storm. It's an apocalyptic site which has been taken advantage of by Hollywood and used for films such as Jurassic World and Dawn of Planet of the Apes. These filmmakers are way braver than I would be, because I would not want to be setting foot on those grounds. The people who have been here all seem to think that something paranormal is going on. Phantom noises echoing throughout the park and other random bodiless sounds are heard all the time. Similarly to a lot of the other things on this list, there is a massive overhanging feeling of dread. The air is thick with it and you can almost taste the discomfort. No one has reported being attacked here, but it seems like that's only a matter of time if people keep going. The mayor of New Orleans is currently looking at demolishing this park, which, in my opinion, probably for the best.
Starting off in our number 5 spot, Indiana Jones. If you've been to Disneyland, then it's likely you've seen the Indiana Jones stunt show. I saw it a few years ago and it was really good. They really make you feel like this actor is in danger. Well, during one show, things took a turn and it was actually the audience who was in danger. So normally they make it look like the boulder runs over Indy and they yell cut and the producers go over to check on the actor, but obviously he's fine. It was all part of the act. Well, during one show, the boulder must have took a weird turn or hit something because it veers off track, bounces off the stage, and heads towards the audience. Take a look. Yeah, could you imagine that thing coming towards you? Yes, it's fake and it wouldn't cause as much damage as an actual boulder, but it would still hurt if it hit you. And that isn't the only problem that this show has had. In 2009, an actor fell to their death during a rehearsal. This is the recording of the 911 phone call.
He's doing a dive roll and I think he landed on his head. He's unconscious right now. He's unconscious. He's not breathing.
Yeah, very spooky stuff. And at number 4, ashes. Okay, so I feel like on the last few Disney videos I have involved ashes, but hey, this is a scary themed channel now, so scary and human remains, they kinda go hand in hand. So if you've watched our other recent Disney lists, then you may know that this topic has come up before. So apparently on the rides, the Haunted Mansion and the Pirates of the Caribbean, people are dumping out their loved ones' ashes. Yeah, I wish I was kidding. For the past few years now, Disney employees have said that people will regularly scatter ashes of loved ones on these 2 rides and some other random places in the park. The Haunted Mansion is the most popular spot for honoring the dead though. I mean, that's pretty fitting when you think about it. Back in 2007, it was reported on the news that a woman was seen pouring out a powdery substance onto the waters of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. When security went to find her after the ride was over, she said it was just baby powder and hurried off. Yeah, that's a little suspicious. Why would someone dump baby powder in the water? Weird. But if you think like it's a good idea to dump some ashes at Disney, think again. They actually have a cleanup crew that goes around and vacuums everything up. So you either keep the ashes or they end up in the vacuum. Here's a clip of the news video.
Shut down after it appears someone may have dumped cremated remains. Witnesses say they saw a female rider on the Pirates of the Caribbean sprinkling a powdery substance into the water last Friday.
At number 3, fireworks. This video is taken back in 2009 and it's titled Ghost Watches Fireworks from Disneyland Castle. Yeah, that's pretty creepy. So people who have watched this video either think that this is a ghost or a maintenance worker wanting to get a close-up view of the fireworks show. But either way, ghost or person, can't blame them, the fireworks show is amazing. But also if this is a person, that's a little too close, probably pretty dangerous. We all know that the castle is actually pretty tiny, and it's just an optical illusion that makes it appear so large. But this person or spirit is really ruining that illusion by standing there. You know, either that or they're a giant. I guess we'll never know.
Number 2, doomed before it could open. The Pripyat amusement park was set to have its grand opening on May 1st of 1986, in time for the May Day celebrations, but these plans were cancelled on April 26th when the Chernobyl disaster occurred, just a couple of kilometers away. Several sources report that the park was opened for a short time on April 27th before the announcement to evacuate the city was made to distract, residents from the unfolding disaster nearby. Constructed under the Soviet Union as a park of culture and rest, typical of many large cities in the then Soviet Union, the amusement park's attractions were manufactured by the Yeskik-based firm Attraction, who were responsible for the construction of many of the amusement parks which remain to be seen around the former Soviet Union today in various states of repair. Located northwest to the Palace of Culture in the center of Pripyat, the park had 5 attractions. The iconic 26-meter Ferris wheel titled Circular Overview, Autodrome bumper cars, a paratrooper ride called Chamomile, Russian swing boats, and also a carnival Pew Pew game. Fun fact, the successor to the original company is still manufacturing the Ferris wheel, paratrooper, and bumper cars to the similar designs as of 2017. Radiation levels around the park kind of vary though. The liquidators washed radiation into the soil after the helicopters carrying radioactive materials used the grounds as a landing strip, so concrete areas are less radioactive. However, areas where moss has built up can emit levels amongst the highest levels of radiation in the whole of Pripyat. So the Ferris wheel actually made news in September of 2017 when Polish tourists turned it mechanically for the first time since 1986. Thankfully, they returned it back to its original position, but kinda neat that it could still work. Number 1, a cursed history. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park opened its doors in 1926 when proprietor Conley Snidow Sr. purchased the land. His vision to build a place for local families to relax and enjoy time together was realized as the coal miners from local towns descended on it each year, making it a fantastic destination for summer vacations. The park was full of activities. It featured a man-made swimming lake, a racetrack, concessions, and cabins for visitors, looking for an overnight stay. The big cornerstones were the Ferris wheel and the swings, two rides that were popular with everyone who spent time at the park. And you know what? That all sounds pretty idyllic to me. Tragedy, though, began to grip the amusement park in the 1950s, when several deaths shocked locals. A young girl's life ended on the swing ride when a delivery truck backed into her seat, killing her in place. Another youngster lost his life when he drowned in the swimming pool after his arm got stuck in a drain pipe. And by 1966, this amusement park closed its doors to the public, and the land sat dormant for decades. In the 1980s, the park again welcomed visitors when Gaylord White acquired the land and set out to restore it to its former glory. In addition to purchasing a Ferris wheel, he found a swing ride that seemed just like the swings that once thrilled guests. Now, fun fact, when they installed the swings on the property, they realized the swings weren't just similar, they were the exact same swings from years prior, something that they decided to advertise during the grand reopening. The Lake Shawnee amusement park welcomed tens of thousands of visitors during its second run, which ran for just 3 years in the 1980s. Unfortunately, high insurance prices forced the White family to close their doors for the second and final time after those couple of short seasons, forcing them to pivot to other activities to keep the land active. They hosted fishing tournaments in what used to be the swimming lake, and they planned to create a space on the property for mud bogging, a motorsport the family knew would draw crowds to watch. While excavating a mud bogging track, the White family made a series of surprising discoveries that added depth to the property's history. For starters, the park was built over a Native American burial ground, with an archaeological dig uncovering 13 bodies, mostly young folks. In the 1700s, the property was the active home base for the Native Americans until they seemed to suddenly disappear. Among the bracelets, clothing, and tools that excavators found, they also found mass graves that suggested as many as 30,000 people had been buried on the property. But, that's not the darkest history of the land. In 1783, Mitchell Clay was the first European settler to make a home in the area, which was heavily inhabited by the Shawnee Native American tribe. So while Clay was gone to town one day, the Shawnees surrounded 3 of the Clay descendants who were working in the fields. Bartley met his end first, and Tabitha, hearing the explosion, ran to her brother, where she was attacked and cut by a stabby implement. Her body was dismembered, and both of their scalps were taken by the entire group. Their brother Ezekiel was captured and burned at the stake. A historical marker on the road leading to the park commemorates their memories. One could wonder if the tragic history of the grounds is the reason for the 6 deaths that occurred at the park, eventually leading to it being closed down in 1966. And many locals, including the park's new owner, claim the park to still be haunted.
Number 5 on this list is Atlantis Marine Park. We are headed all the way down under for this one because Atlantis Marine Park is actually in Australia. AustralianNews.com writes, Atlantis Marine Park was initially a huge success with families from WA and beyond flocking to the park to watch the live dolphin shows, swim in the pools, ride pedal boats, and have their obligatory photo with King Neptune, a huge statue at the entrance to the park. However, in 1990, just 9 years after opening, Atlantis shut its doors. Western Australia's boom never eventuated, and the 1987 stock market crash put a halt to prosperity. Atlantis closed due to financial difficulty and was left abandoned. It has since been damaged by vandals and has become overgrown and derelict. Old statues can still be found scattered throughout the grounds, as well as broken walls and concrete pools. For years, it was no man's land, popular with dog walkers. However, just last month, the iconic King Neptune was restored to his former glory after a petition by locals who started an online campaign for something to be done with the ruins. Well, I'm glad to see that Neptune is looking fresh again, but I don't know how long he'll stay that way. Apparently, this place, when the sun goes down, is home to some evil creatures. 4-legged mutant things with glowing red eyes that hiss and are nothing that we know of from this world. Now, this could be a bunch of baloney, but that's what some people have reported seeing when they've explored this place at night. Probably safe to go during the daytime, just make sure you set an alarm for 6 p.m. to get out of there if you do go. Number 4 on this list is Crinkly Bottom Theme Park. This one, to my understanding, has been demolished, but it still deserves a spot on this list because of how creepy it was when it was around. Mr. Blobby was a TV caricature in the early 1990s. He was featured on one of Britain's most successful late-night Saturday television shows and was this big pink blob creature with a bow tie on. This was a comedy television show, and this blob thing didn't lack any of that. He would often engage in annoying antics with celebrity guests and become a bit of a British television phenomenon. Well, Mr. Blobby was successful enough that he of course needed toys, merchandise, and heck, while we're at it, let's give him his own amusement park. Sometimes what works well on TV doesn't always translate to a fun amusement park though. Crinkly Bottom was what they called it, and it opened up in 1994. This annoying sidekick's popularity didn't last forever though, and this amusement park's life was very short-lived. The place shut down in 1996 because it simply was not making enough money. Then it faded away into obscurity and everybody forgot about this interesting little business venture. That was until 2009 though, when some urban explorers stumbled upon it again. The once bright and beautiful Blobby Land looked like something straight out of a horror film. It was worn and gross and just reeked of evil. Animals had taken up residence there, and based on how the place looked, it wouldn't have been surprising if some sketchy characters once did business there too. You can't visit it now because it's demolished, but you really shouldn't have been going when it was around anyways. Number 3 on this list is Boblo Island. I had to include Boblo Island on this list to give a bit of a shout out to Ontario, where your boy grew up. Boblo Island was wildly successful for a time and operated for nearly a century. As with a lot of places on this list though, it couldn't seem to power through the 90s and had to shut down. Reader's Digest says, picture an 1898 Victorian amusement park, music from an organ grinder, women's skirts swishing around the dance hall, children's laughter echoing from various newfangled rides. That's what this theme park on Boys Blank Island, nicknamed Boblo, near Detroit on the Canadian side of the Detroit River, was to residents alike. Its doors were shut nearly 100 years later in 1993, and the area is now closed to the public. But you can boat or kayak by the remains, listening for the ghostly sounds of long past visitors. While you can't stay here overnight, you can rent these 8 haunted places on Airbnb. Being on an island really adds to the creepiness for me, I think. Like this place, from all the pictures I could find, it really looks totally detached from all other society. Basically meaning that whatever happens here, you are totally by yourself. Like there is a new set of rules for this island. There have been stories that something lurks here, a spirit or something dark. Be very careful if you ever go to Boblo Island.
In second place, we have the Joyland deaths. Located in Wichita, Kansas, Joyland once featured state-of-the-art rides and attractions, holding a reign of 55 years of fun and joy. Today, the once popular park is being reclaimed by nature, piece by piece by piece by piece. Joyland came into existence on June 12th of 1949. It was founded by Lester Ottaway and his sons, Herbert and Harold. Now, Herb had a passion for steam engines and race cars, and he refurbished both types of vehicles. By 1934, Herb Ottaway had refurbished a miniature steam locomotive and cars, and was traveling with them to county fairs in Kansas and Colorado. Joyland was originally opened to give Herb's refurbished locomotive a more permanent home. As the attraction became more popular, the Ottaways eventually added a number of different rides and games to the amusement park. Now, Lester Ottaway passed away in the mid-1950s, but his sons continued running Joyland until the early 1970s, when they decided to, retire. Joyland was then sold to Stanley and Margaret Nelson, who owned the park until it closed its doors in 2004. Joyland featured attractions such as a wooden roller coaster, my personal favorite kind of coaster, a wacky shack dark ride, a log jam, a sky coaster, bumper cars, the classic carousel, and of course, a Ferris wheel. Now, on April 6th of 2004, a 13-year-old girl was enjoying a Ferris wheel ride with her friends when the restraint bar holding them in came undone. The young girl fell more than 30 feet, suffering multiple head, arm, and leg injuries, and it's a miracle that she survived. The Ferris wheel was immediately closed, while both private and federal investigations looked into whether everything was, safe and up to code. The ride managed to, reopen eventually after these investigations were wrapped up, so okay, I wonder what to code means anymore. Another notable ride at Joyland was the wooden roller coaster that was known as the Nightmare. Although the roller coaster was a staple at the amusement park, it too saw its fair share of injuries. On May 25th of 1977, one rider stood up in one of these carts and fell. He passed at the scene from injuries sustained from the fall. Another death occurred 20 years later on August 27th of 1998 when a 35-year-old maintenance worker named Kevin Briley was under the ride trimming the grass. He stood up and was tragically hit by the roller coaster. He also died at the scene from his injuries. My heart hurts telling that tale because I'm such a huge lover of traditional wooden roller coasters. There's just something about narrowly avoiding whiplash that I personally find thrilling. Joyland closed its doors in 2004. Maybe it might be worth, a little urban exploration. In first place, time to visit the ghosts of the Enchanted Forest. The whimsical 20-acre amusement park was built in an Oregon forest and boasted handcrafted attractions like Storybook Lane and Toftville Western Town, along with rides like the Ice Cream Mountain bobsled roller coaster and a big timber log ride. Sounds pretty magical, right? Yeah, that all depends on who you ask. Though many folks experience nothing more than a charming park, other more abnormal experiences are definitely not in line with a regular amusement park. For many, a visit to the Enchanted Forest can be a supernatural phenomenon, and I know I'd be happy either way. I love all things fantastical and wonderful and whimsical, but also spooky. Tales of employees feeling a ghostly presence on attractions like the Haunted House and Challenge of Mondor ride caught my eye while doing research for today. The story of Enchanted Forest starts with Roger Toft, the park's creator, who spent every last penny he had to make his passion project come to life in 1971. His granddaughter, Ashley Toft, is now the park's general manager, and while she claims she's personally never experienced any supernatural phenomena on the Haunted House, she did admit that the attraction makes her feel anxious and overwhelmed. While guiding a group of experienced paranormal experts through the attraction, she led them directly to a cold spot that could be attributed to an otherworldly presence. As much as I understand the stigma of not wanting to believe in ghosts, that's a coincidence I can't just ignore. Challenge of Mondor ride operator Chris Dunn has since told a tale of an inexplicable encounter that he experienced one morning in 2016 while prepping the wizard-themed target aiming attraction for the day. He explained how he heard footsteps behind him, but turned around. No one there. Mere seconds after hearing the footsteps, he described being hit with a strange energy throughout his body, one that made him dizzy and gave him a horrible case of chills. Now later in the day, the same thing happened, but with more intensity. He took photos of the ride not in operation and captured images of what looks to be an orb that changes shapes in 3 sequential photos. The team of investigators I mentioned before were granted permission to spend a night unsupervised at the park and experience the chilling energy and the Challenge of Mondor and managed to communicate with a spirit in the haunted house. Notice how I haven't mentioned a park tragedy yet as the cause for anything? That's because, unlike the other places on this list, there wasn't one. The haunted house was built during the original construction along with the rest of attractions, and Challenge of Mondor was constructed in 2006. Time to borrow that time machine I've been asking the powers that be for, and travel on back. In August of 1846, Oregon settlers and indigenous tribes of the Willamette Valley fought a terrible battle in present-day Salem known as Battle Creek. The theory most people believe is that the energy could be the cause of the manifestation in the theme park, which was built in close proximity to the gruesome fight. You let me know what you think down in the comments. Number 5, the Warner Brothers Jungle Habitat. Originally opening on July 19th of 1972, this park closed its doors by 1976, which is a really bad timeline for a theme park that was technically never completed. The first time Jungle Habitat made headlines was only months after it first opened for business, when an Israeli tourist named Abraham Levy was riding through the safari in a taxi cab and decided to roll down the window to get a better look at some of the animals roaming about. 2 lions attacked the car and mauled the 26-year-old tourist, causing lacerations to his face and shoulder. He took credit for the harm, citing his own foolishness, which helped to dodge a media onslaught. Well, for the most part. By the end of the year, reports of animals escaping into the wilds of West Milford were far too many in volume to be ignored. Besides sightings of harmless animals like peacocks, there were rumors spreading about dangerous animals such as a pack of wolves and a lion being sighted along local roads. These sentiments, voiced 28 years ago, are identical to the rumors still running rampant today. Yep, you heard me, today. Tales told by West Milford residents who have looked out in their backyards include wandering ostriches and a band of baboons running amok in the town's pharmacy. Emus, baboons, and even wolves are just some of the uncaged critters which were known to have escaped the park. I feel like I found the origins for the Night at the Museum franchise. On July 8th of 1974, a 68-year-old visitor from Long Island was grabbed by the trunk of a baby elephant, which then slammed her against a fence and bit her. The woman, Elizabeth Ennis, was later awarded $200,000 by a court. In an account in the New York Times, she claims the elephant bit her on her right hand, and because of the trauma incurred by being slammed into the fence, she had persistent pain in her right side that prevented her from lifting heavy items. Her husband was awarded $5,000 for loss of companionship. So the animals at the park also had a tendency to damage the cars that passed through. An e-museum for the park says that tigers like to bite and pop car tires, and monkeys like to rip antennas off of cars. Sounds like a lack of good animal training and boundaries to me. So right after the park closed in 1976, some animal carcasses were left outside. This pile grew until 30 animal bodies, including that of an elephant, a bison, a camel, some zebras, were all left lying until April, when the ground had thawed enough to finally bury what was left of the bodies. The 6 months that they were left exposed was a violation of state laws, which stated that any animal should be buried within 48 hours of its death. Despite this violation, Warner Brothers was not sanctioned. Jungle Habitat is gone now, but not forgotten. Reports of mysterious kangaroo sightings in remote corners of West Milford still turn up from time to time. Number 4, Under the Sea Gone Wrong. Disney's River Country was the first water park at Walt Disney World, and possibly the first themed water park ever. Look, as much as I love Disney World and I'm mentally planning my next trip back, I'm here to call a spade a spade. Some consider River Country to be the first water park anywhere, but that depends on how you define a water park. Yes, River Country opened almost a year before Wet n Wild in Orlando, but there were public pools and lake parks with water slides and other aquatic play equipment long before River Country opened. So just as Disneyland had reinvented the amusement park 21 years earlier, River Country reinvented aquatic recreation. The water park's grand opening was on June 20th of 1976, and on Thursday, August 28th of 1980, a sad Associated Press story appeared in newspapers throughout North America. It was reported that a rare but deadly disease caused by an amoeba found in Florida freshwater lakes had claimed its fourth victim, a New York youngster who had spent his vacation swimming at River Country. The disease, amoebic meningoencephalitis, attacked the nervous system and brain. You don't want to know how many tries it took me to say that. The youngster died after the amoeba entered his nose, went through the nasal passage, and attacked the nervous system, including the brain. Investigators from the U.S. Center for Disease Control in Atlanta and the New York Health Department pinpointed River Country as the source of the amoeba after the parents reported that the amusement park was the only place where he went swimming. So photos and maps of River Country show that the park had two bodies of water. The smaller one was a clean, clear swimming pool. The larger one appeared to be a natural cove, completely open to Bay Lake, which is the largest natural lake at Walt Disney World. At some point in the 1990s, Walt Disney World banned swimming in its lake. The 1995 map of Walt Disney World still included the resort's beaches under the swimming section, whereas the 2000 edition made it clear that the beaches were strictly for sunbathing. But River Country stayed open. There was never another death from amoebic, very long word that I'm not going to try and say again, linked to River Country. But there were two drownings, one in 1982 and the other in 1989. So River Country had its normal seasonal closing at the end of the 2001 season, but when the time came for it to reopen for the 2002 season, it didn't. River Country never reopened. Number 3, Joyland deaths. Located in Wichita, Kansas, Joyland once featured state-of-the-art rides and attractions, holding a reign of 55 years of fun and joy. Today, the once popular park is being reclaimed by nature, piece by piece by piece. So Joyland came into existence on June 12th of 1949 and was founded by Lester Ottaway and his sons, Herbert and Harold. Herb Ottaway had a passion for steam engines and race cars, and he refurbished both types of vehicles. By 1934, Herb had refurbished a miniature steam locomotive and cars and was traveling with them to county fairs in Kansas and Colorado. Joyland was open to give Herb's refurbished locomotive a more permanent home. As the attraction became more popular, the Ottaways eventually added a number of different rides and games to the amusement park. Lester Ottaway passed away in the mid-1950s, and his sons continued running Joyland until the early 1970s when they decided to retire. Joyland was then sold to Stanley and Margaret Nelson, who owned the park until it closed its doors in 2004. Joyland featured attractions such as a wooden roller coaster, which I love, a wacky shacky dark ride, a log jam, a sky coaster, bumper cars, a carousel, and a Ferris wheel. On April 6th of 2004, a 13-year-old girl was enjoying a Ferris wheel ride with her friends when the restraint bar holding them in came undone. The young girl fell more than 30 feet, suffering multiple head, arm, and leg injuries. The Ferris wheel was immediately closed while both private and federal investigators looked into whether everything was safe and up to code. The ride was later reopened after these investigations were wrapped up. Also, another notable ride at Joyland was the wooden roller coaster that was known as the Nightmare. Although the roller coaster was a staple at the amusement park, it too saw its fair share of injuries, which is a shame. Like, I really love wooden coasters. On May 25th of 1977, somebody in the single digits of age stood up in one of the carts and fell, died at the scene from the injuries sustained from the fall. Another death occurred 20 years later, on August 27th of 1998, when 35-year-old maintenance worker Kevin Briley was under the ride trimming the grass. He stood up and was tragically hit by the coaster and passed away. My heart hurts telling that tale because, like I said already, I'm such a huge lover of traditional wooden roller coasters. You know, there's just something about narrowly avoiding whiplash that I personally find thrilling. And go figure, Joyland closed its doors in 2004.
Coming in at number 2, Land of Oz, North Carolina. The Land of Oz is a theme park in the resort town of Beach Mountain, North Carolina. In 1970, it opened as a theme park based on the L. Frank Baum Wizard of Oz book by Caroline Caribbean Corporation. Based on the L. Frank Baum Wizard of Oz books by Caroline Caribbean Corporation under the guidance of Grover Robbins, who had been successful with Sweetsea's Railroad and designed by Jack Pentis. On Sunday, December 28, 1975, a fire was set to the Emerald City Amphitheater. On Sunday, December 28, 1975, a fire was set to the Emerald City Amphitheater and surrounding gift shops. 2 buildings were destroyed along with the park's offices, costumes, sound equipment, and props. There is some speculation that the fires were set by disgruntled employees. Now it would go on to be rebuilt and managed by a new company, however, it would never recover with the park officially closing in 1980. Urban explorers often visit the park, taking pictures and sometimes even stealing pieces of the yellow brick road. Land of Oz still opens its gates a few days a year around Halloween for visitors brave enough to explore. And finally, coming in at number 1, Dunblobbin Crinkly Bottom Theme Park, England. Crinkly Bottom, also popularly referred to as Blobbyland, was the operating title for a series of British theme parks operating in the 1990s. They were created by Noel Edmonds, based on the fictional village of Crinkly Bottom, where the Noel's House Party TV series was based. 3 parks were operated under the Crinkly Bottom name in England by Edmonds' company, however all the parks eventually failed and were either closed or rebranded. The first park located in Cricket St Thomas was based around the existing wildlife park in the Cricket House Country Estate. The Crinkly Bottom Park was based around Mr. Blobby, with a Blobby themed house called Dunblobbin being the main attraction. The park opened back in 1994 and was popular for a while, however a couple years later Edmonds pulled out of backing the park, with it being rebranded to Cricket St Thomas Wildlife Park and Dunblobbin being closed and sealed off. In the 2000s, urban explorers rediscovered the abandoned Dunblobbin house, which of course led to more people returning to Cricket St Thomas to see it. Today there are a ton of rumours that the site is haunted and ghost hunters often visit in hopes of catching something supernatural. Coming in at number 5, we have Six Flags New Orleans. Six Flags is a 140-acre abandoned theme park in New Orleans. It first opened in 2000 but has been closed since it was seriously damaged by flooding during Hurricane Katrina on August 29, 2005. Despite various proposals to redevelop the site, it has remained abandoned, overgrown with plants, infested with wildlife, and in poor condition. Trespassing is prohibited, yet videos and photos of the site keep surfacing over the years from urban explorers and thrill seekers. As a result, city officials have become more diligent in securing the park and banning tours. As of today, there is still a creepy sign at the park entrance which reads, "Closed for the storm." The site remains abandoned and is the perfect location for a movie set, with movies like Jurassic Park and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes using it as their backdrop. Coming in at number 4, we have Pripyat Amusement Park, Chernobyl, Ukraine. The Pripyat Amusement Park is an abandoned park located in Pripyat, Ukraine. It was to be opened for the first time on May 1st, 1986, in time for the May Day celebrations. But these plans were cancelled on April 26 when the Chernobyl nuclear disaster occurred a few kilometers away. Constructed under the Soviet Union, the amusement park includes 5 attractions: the iconic Ferris wheel, bumper cars, paratrooper rides, and a carnival shooting game. The park was briefly accessible to locals, but they were forced to evacuate as reports of dangerously high levels of radiation in the area started to emerge. Theories that the park hurriedly opened in the aftermath of the accident distract Pripyat residents from the unfolding disaster seem to be substantiated by the fact that some of the rides were never fully completed. In any case, the park, particularly the Ferris wheel, have become a new symbol for the Chernobyl disaster. Radiation levels around the park vary. The liquidators washed radiation into the soil after the helicopters carrying radioactive materials used the grounds as landing strip, so concrete areas are relatively safe. However, areas where moss has built up are among the highest levels of radiation in the whole of Pripyat. Today the park remains untouched, and with the unused rides gradually disintegrating and being consumed by mold. Coming in at number 3, Gulliver's Kingdom, Yamanashi, Japan. This surreal amusement park was based on the novel Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. At the centre of the sprawling park lay a giant model of the novel's titular character, Lemuel Gulliver, tied to the ground. The park has a beautiful view of Mount Fuji, however sadly due to low visitor numbers, the park only lasted 4 years before being closed down. Luckily for us though, photographer Martin Lyle explored the park's interior, stating, "The giant Gulliver was unreal. Entering the grounds I didn't see him right away, then as I delved deeper into the park he suddenly loomed out of the landscape. It was such a momentous thing to stand in the presence of. It was the most amazing and surreal object I've ever seen. It felt so weird to lie in the palm of a giant man, while surrounded by the stunning scenery."
Coming in at number 2, Ghost Mountain. Yeah, forget Space Mountain, they need to change the name to Ghost Mountain. In this video, you can lightly make out this bluish see-through shape going onto the ride approaching from the left-hand side. You can see that this figure goes and sits down next to a man who's 4 seats down. This spirit is actually pretty well known. It's It's referred to as Mr. One-Way. Mr. One-Way is sometimes spotted on the side of rides, most commonly the Space Mountain ride, and he's just waiting there to take his turn. It's really creepy how this blue image just makes its way onto the ride and then literally stops once it's in an empty seat. The fact that it literally stops in an empty seat is what really got me. The video is a bit shaky as it is off a security camera, but nonetheless, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Some people have said that this is just a trick with the lighting, but then there are the people who believe in Mr. One-Way. Some of the employees that work at Disney took it to the internet and said that they believe Mr. One-Way is the ghost of a former cast member named Javier Cruz. He was once in the Pluto costume in 2004 on top of the Beauty and the Beast parade float, and he fell to his death. In at number 1, Walt. This image is captured on Disneyland CCTV. People are speculating that this is the ghost of Walt Disney himself wandering around the park after it's closed. What makes this even creepier is that this is captured on not just one, but multiple cameras, and the spirit is in sync on all of them. Obviously, there are some people out there who don't believe in spirits, and they just think that this is a reflection of lights. But come on, clearly this is some sort of spirit. It's just too clear, and the fact that it continues steadily at the same pace throughout all frames, yeah. That's definitely more than reflections of light. And then there's this one.